Atmos.
You sent Diane an email saying she wasn't going to be here this morning.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to pull item 6A.
Good morning. Welcome to the last City Commission meeting of 2017 for the City of Lawrence. We're going to start with a consent agenda. The mayor's not here this morning, so I'll go ahead and start this off. All matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Members of the public wishing to speak to an item that has been pulled off the consent agenda will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Are there any items that a commissioner wishes to take off of the consent agenda?
Vice Mayor, item 6A.
Okay, that's 6A. Any other item? Is there anything that a member of the public would like to pull off of the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and deal with the consent agenda. And adding to that are claims from 171 vendors in the amount of $2,086,609.45.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 6A and the addition of the claims.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion with Amix, a second with Larson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposition, passes unanimously. Okay, and then we have 6A.
Vice Mayor, the item is the approve the change order to the R.D. Johnson Excavating Company's bid for 23rd Nosdale and the stormwater improvement projects. Has to do with the memo that was put out and talks about that after the bid was accepted and notice to proceed was issued, that there were several items that were added to the original project. And you know, looking at this, it was a $2.8 million project. And again, as I think Matt had said earlier, it still came in under the estimates that of the project. But we have about 10% of this project that really wasn't bid and could have, any of those parts of that project been anticipated. You know, one of the things that I guess is important to me in all of this, and I'm not planning on voting against it because we have to pay the bill on a project that's been done, but you know, in the future, I think that we need to really look at a project and on these things that, you know, can be anticipated, like a sidewalk. It seems to me that that is something that could be bid into that project rather than after the fact added on, or at least be able to put it back out to bid. I wouldn't have any idea how fast these items were added to the original project after the bid went out and the notice to proceed happened, but whatever it was, it seemed to me that we need to make sure that we're doing, you know, the best we can to get all these projects bid.
Yes, Commissioner, I think you're right. The change orders typically are reflective of items that we haven't anticipated with the project. And so Matt Bond, who was the project manager with this particular project this year, this morning, so I asked if Matt could maybe address the particular items that make up the change order.
Commissioner, the item that you're referring to would be the additional concrete that we had. That was our biggest piece.
Right.
And when we actually got into the construction of the project, major portion of 24th Street, we had to cross, and then we ran parallel to on both the south and north side. When we started pulling that up, a lot of the concrete panels were actually cracked, and when we started removing sections that we were taking out with the original project, we noticed some of the concrete was only 4 inches thick, and that's why it was cracked. Typically it's 10 inches. So with those cracked sections, that's what we started pulling out. So that we didn't know that it was 4 inches thick, so that was the major overrun on this one.
Yeah, I don't have any real questions. I know what you all presented and is absolutely right, and I know that these things are going to be found out. I guess the big thing that I see is that, you know, the commission essentially only gets to look at the original project as it comes forward, and a lot of the change orders as they come through, we don't ever get to see that part until the final bill's paid. Right. So the only time to really question those things, I guess, unless that there's memos that are put out throughout the project, is whether or not how does it affect the bidding process? So that's all I look at.
Okay.
Okay.
When that 24th Street section of concrete was poured, was it supposed to be poured at 10 inches?
About 40 years ago when it was done, yeah, 8 to 10. I mean, that's typically what concrete pavement's put in at.
Do we have a mechanism in place to do inspection on that in the future?
If we do, we're gonna have to core the streets. I mean, that's typically if we patch something, we make that note in our PCI, our pavement condition indices, and then go from there.
Okay.
What about the street repair at the intersection of 24th?
That
and
valley gutter section needed help, and since we were bringing sidewalk up from the south side of Osdahl to the south side of 24th Street, you know, 24th Street's offset there.
Right.
then it was necessary to go ahead and take that on out.
I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, because it
Yeah.
was in horrible shape, and we were redoing the ramps there anyway, and then we were gonna leave that gap of sidewalk between what would be on the west side of Osdall and what is on the east side for that stretch, so that's when we decided to put that concrete in, that sidewalk in.
Yeah,
That came really to light, Vice Mayor, when we were setting up all of the temporary sidewalk control for Schwegler. So it was noticed at that time, it was like, well, we need to make this connection because
Right.
can't do a almost $3 million project and leave out a sidewalk gap of a couple hundred feet. Let's do it while we're here. Let's take care of it. So.
yeah. Okay, thanks, man. Any public comment on this? Okay,
So,
back to 6A.
Mayor, if there's no other comments or questions, like I say, my big thing is just to make sure that, we understand that, when the bidding process probably needs to happen and the governing body getting, better involved with when those change orders are coming through. So anyway, with all that said, it's a bill that we have to pay. RD obviously has already done the work. So. Anyway, I would make a motion to approve the change order in the amount of $272,484.39 to RD Johnson Excavating Company for the 23rd Nosdale Street project.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Amix and Herbert, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, so that takes care of our consent agenda. We'll go on to public comment. The public is allowed to speak to any items or issues that are not scheduled on the agenda after first being recognized by the mayor. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes for public comment. It's a general practice, and this won't really matter today because we don't have any regular agenda items. So individuals are asked to come to the microphone, sign in, and state their name and address. Speakers should address all comments and questions to the commission. We have public comment this morning?
Good morning, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Ted Boyle, North Lawrence Improvement. This morning I'm up here speaking about trees, especially historical trees. We've got several in North Lawrence, and here a few weeks ago I saw city employees, forestry, examining a tree at 4th and Elm, which is written documentation. That tree has been there since about the 1870s. This tree has, and they were looking at it, and I had spoke after the wet microburst that we had that city trees on right-of-ways need to be pruned, the large ones trimmed out. And so being that there have been a few, you might say, 100-year-old historical trees removed in Lawrence. I know of one just west of 6th and Tennessee on the north side of the street. And I know the city was managing that tree probably for 8 or 10 years, and I drove past that tree for a long time, and I lived in the Pinckney neighborhood for a couple of years after the 51 flood. But anyway, the tree was removed. It was an old oak tree, way over 100 years old, and I assume the reason it was removed because it was encroaching on the curb of 6th Street. And the deal is our trees are our asset to the future, and we are called a tree city. But it looks like we're getting into these little genetically engineered trees. They get about 20 foot tall, live about 20 years, susceptible to disease, and not paying attention to our real trees that are 70 feet tall, 80 feet tall, and have been around for over 100 years. So this tree at 4th and Elm, the city was looking at it, and I stopped, got out of my truck, went over there and questioned them about it because this is one of our prized possessions in North Lawrence. And if it was to come down unexpectedly for some reason, oh man, it'd be hell to raise. So what I'd like to have on future agendas next year is to get the neighborhoods notified by the forestry of what trees are going to be removed and why. And if it's a historical tree, then it has to be studied to see what needs to be done. So I would like to have that and the residents of North Lawrence and these historical trees protected. So I don't want to come out, drive down Elm Street and find that tree laying on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. It's interesting to note that you're actually over on the south side of the river for a couple of years. Okay.
Vice Mayor, we can certainly look into that, and we'll get back with Mr. Boyle. But I would like to note that I can tell you that our forestry staff, probably more than most people in the community, pay very close attention to these trees. The historical trees that we have are an amazing asset. They manage them, as Mr. Boyle points out, in many cases beyond their typical lifespan, and they really work hard to try and maintain them as long as possible. Sometimes those trees become a safety hazard and they have to take them out. I remember one a couple of years ago that we had to take out in South Park that had been there many, many years, and that's difficult for the staff to do, but we also have to think about the safety of people that are close to them. So, but this particular one I'm not familiar with, but we'll look into it and get back.
Well, we appreciate staff's responsiveness to the public comment. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other public comment? Commission items? City manager's report.
There's just a few items on here for you today, Commissioners. The future agendas items, so you'll note again, there's no meeting next week, but there is the reorganization meeting on Monday, January the 8th, for the state of the city and the swearing in of the new commission and the election of the mayor and vice mayor. There will be a city commission orientation session on January the 10th, and there's been some confusion about that location. It will be upstairs in the city manager's conference room on the 4th floor, so we'll be sure to make a note of that in the other location where it's listed in another place. And then you see quite a busy meeting there on the 16th, it being one of only the 2 meetings here that we have in January. Then for future work session items, there's a list there for you. We're looking ahead, since there's none in January, to February with some discussion by the hospital of their future plans, and then a discussion about the neighborhood revitalization area, and I think there's some interest in how could that be used in that particular tool in other ways. And a couple of items there on your to-be-determined list that we'll be working to schedule in 2018. We'd like to wish you all a very happy and healthy 2018.
Thank you very much, Diane. Calendar.
I'm not going to be here the 16th.
It's open to the public, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, please do.
Just
You
hoping
need to take
still
lessons
show up
from
on the
Ted,
8th.
that's all.
Yeah, I'll be here the 8th.
Okay.
Get my paycheck.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, why not?
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.